Today's project is going to be changing the rear brakes and adjusting the e-brake on my 2002 Mazda Miata. Now before we get started, please like and subscribe. Appreciate your help with that. Well, we're going to need brakes pads, obviously, so we got our brake pads here. You're going to need a brake cleaner so you can clean off the rotors and the brake pads if you need to. And then we're going to need some grease, some brake grease. And you got to have brake grease, not the regular kind of grease. This is high temperature grease. Tool-wise, we're going to need a 10mm socket, which hopefully you won't lose that one. A 14mm socket, an extender possibly. We're going to need a 4mm Allen key here. And if you have wheels that have locks on them, you're going to need your key, obviously, to take the lug nuts off the lock. And that's really about it. Let's delve into it and start the project. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check to see if what the status of the brake fluid is. It was changed about 2 years ago, and that's usually when you want to check to make sure that you don't have too much water in the brake fluid. It does get moisture, and so once it gets to a level of moisture, then you do want to replace it. So first thing we're going to do is I've got this tester here that I bought off of Amazon, and we're going to test the brake fluid to see if we need to change it, bleed the brakes as we change them. So we turn the probe on, put it in the brake fluid, and you can see it only turns on one orange light. So that means that we don't have to say it. We are in the safe area. So let's just start doing the brakes. To start this job, we got to take the cover off of the e-brake here because we're going to actually then adjust it once we get the new brake pads in. So to do that, there's just one screw right here that you unscrew, and then let me get the screw, and then this will come apart. There we go. Okay. So that comes out. And get this other piece out. These are your two pieces that you have here. And then I'll show you the adjusting screw over here. Alright, the adjustment is right here. And we're just going to take a screwdriver and we're just going to back it off to relieve tension on the cable in the back. And that should do it. We are going to put the car up in the air and put jack stands underneath it. So I'm going to jack it up on the frame rails underneath, and then I'll put the jack stands on. I'll put these right here where the normal scissor jack would go, and then I've got these rubber I don't know what you call them, little rubber pieces here that fit on top of the jack stands, and then this goes right in that slot so that you don't crush the frame rail. So let's get the car jacked up and get it up off the ground. The other thing I want to caution you on is because we're going to be adjusting the e-brake, I did put wheel chucks on the front wheels so that the car will not roll, because when we adjust the e-brake we need to put the car in neutral and spin the rotor so that we can get it to a point where it's just touching, the brake pads are just touching the rotor, and then we adjust the e-brake. Okay, now we've got the car up on the jacks, and you can see how that rubber piece right here fits on the jack stand. It's kind of nice, it fits right in that slot. So now we just get the tires off and we'll start putting the new brake pads on. Alright, nothing fancy here, we're just taking the lug nuts off. Start with my locking bolt here. That's it for the tire. We'll slide it underneath the car for protection. And we'll go do the other side. There are two bolts on the back of this caliper. And the one we want to remove is this one right here. The other one over on this side over here, actually you'll be able to tell that it holds a bracket there. So this is the one that we'll want to remove. It's a 14mm, and this is the one that we will adjust the caliper out once we take the bolt out. We'll stick a 4mm Allen screw in there and then back it off, and it will allow us to remove the caliper off of the rotor.
Back of that brake caliper here.
this bolt is the one right here. Remove the caliper bolt, which is right underneath here, which is this guy right here. And this has got a little dust cover on it, so we have to remove the dust cover, and then we can slide the caliper up. All right, first thing we're gonna do is get this little dust cover off. So we'll kind of pry this off. There we go. All right. And this bolt is it's 10 millimeter. So let's take this off. All right, and that guy's out of there. Now the next thing we're going to do is get that 14 millimeter bolt. All right, and then the next thing we're going to do is put the 4 millimeter Allen wrench in the hole where that bolt is. Feel it in there, and I'm going to back out. I'm backing out the screw right now, which is actually backing out the cylinder, the caliper cylinder. And that should do it. And we can lift the caliper up and put this back in, and we'll actually compress it a little bit more because it's going to need more to get back on there. Now the next thing we're going to do is just remove the caliper off of the rotor, because we're going to grease up the bolt that this thing slips in on. So we'll pull this up and it'll come straight back. Alright. We'll hang it there so it doesn't fall off. Now, next thing we're going to do is remove the brake pads. And as you can see, they're pretty worn. And the hardware just comes off. We're going to reuse the hardware. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit. And then we'll put this back on and put the new brake pads on. Now this is the pin that the brake caliper sits on. So I'm going to clean that off, and then I'm going to apply some brake grease to it, and then we'll slip the piston, the caliper, I'm sorry, on that pin, and then after we get the brake pads ready to go here. Now we're just going to take our wire brush here and just kind of clean up this a little bit. There's a little bit of rust on it. That's where the metal, the hardware goes that holds the brake pads in. So we just kind of clean that up a little bit, and we're going to clean that rod off of the grease that it has on it, and then we'll put some new grease on it to make it so it'll shine nice. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little brake cleaner on it, on this area. Put this piece in up here. Like so. And the brake pad just slips right in like that. Put the one on in the rear. Like that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little brake grease on this piece right here, and then also on the back, and then we'll slide this. We'll put some on that also. So apply a little bit of grease here. Remember, you don't want to get grease on the back of the brake pads at all, so you got to use a little caution when doing this. And we're going to apply it to the back here. And what this does is stop your brakes from squealing. And we'll apply some onto the slide piece here. And this allows the brake caliper to slide back and forth. Alright, so let's get the brake caliper up here, and hopefully we've adjusted the piston back enough. So we're going to slide that guy on there and slide it down just like that. And now we'll put we'll get this thing fitted correctly here. That kind of has like a little boot there. So we'll fix that boot, and then we'll put the old screws back in. All right, we're going to put this bolt back in, and this one gets some grease applied to it too, because the caliper also slides off of that. So we'll grease that up. And then just slide it right in, and then we're going to take our 10mm ratchet and tighten it in. Get that bolt in there, snug it in, and then we take that little dust cover and we just pop it right back over the bolt like that. Next thing we got to do is adjust the brake, and you'll see that I've got play here. So what I'm going to do is take my 4mm Allen bolt, or Allen tool, put it into that back hole, and I'm going to start spinning it forward until I actually have that piston out enough where it's starting to push the brake calipers apart. I test that by rotating the rotor like that. Okay, now I'm tight, so now I'm going to back it off just a little bit so that I got some play. Maybe about 1/4 to a 1/2 turn. So now I've got full play in the rotor, and then the last thing we got to do is put its bolt back on and cover up that hole. Alright, and we take our 14mm and just kind of snug that bolt in. And that's it. Now we'll go do the other side. And that's all done the same way. And that's it. Left side's done. Alright, so the last thing we got to do is adjust the e-brake. And we're going to do that by rotating this stop. And what that's going to do is start taking up cable slack. And then as I get tight, now I can see that it is definitely grabbing. So I'm going to go test one of the wheels. I still have play in the wheels, which is good. Tighten it just a little bit more. That's good and tight there. And one final adjustment, I'm just going to back it out just a little bit. And that's it. Now the next part is then to put my pieces back on. It's now definitely a lot. It used to come way up to here. Now it's nice and tight there, so I'd say we're good to go. And I'll put my covers back on and we're all done. Last step in the process is to put the wheels back on. And we'll take it off the jack stands, take it for a test run, and we're good to go. Next step then is to torque them with the torque wrench, and to do that we got to put it down on the ground, so I'm going to go put the tire on the other side, and then we'll take the jack stands out and torque them down. The last thing you want to do when you finish a brake job is to check the fluid level of your brake fluid. Mine right now, as you can see from the darker color, is at its max, which is where it should be. You want to be careful to not have that overflow when you're working on your brakes. You are pushing fluid back into the master cylinder and into the brake fluid reservoir here, so you have to keep an eye on it if you're working with your brakes, depending upon how far your brakes are worn down. The other thing you want to make sure of is that you only put whatever the manufacturer recommends for brake fluid in your brake fluid reservoir. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe and like, and we'll see you at the next one.